about this, but I'm going to talk about the ego death, right? So, through these shamanistic experiences, I've heard a lot of people talk about having to go through the idea of an ego death and sort of losing that sense of self. Yep. So maybe that's what he was kind of referring to, because obviously, I don't know if these entities that we'll get to in a second thought he was literally going to die. Like maybe that's what the medicine does. It tricks the other side into thinking you're dying. I don't know. We'll move on. So he explains that these entities that he first made contact with once he was like fully in the effect of ayahuasca. Jesus, my voice just dropped. My balls just dropped.
Hey guys, how's it going? Matt here. I just got my first puke.
Hi, Mom. Excuse me.
He kills them. Good job, guys. It's like 15 minutes in, and this is your first dick joke. Congrats. It's the slowest it's ever happened.
I know. We got all serious to begin with, but now we'll loosen up a little. Now that the ayahuasca's kicking in. So he says the givers of these thoughts, Hannah describes as, get this is what he describes these first entities he comes into contact with. Giant reptilian creatures reposing, or basically relaxing, sluggishly at the lowermost depths at the back of my brain. And it was like in the area he felt it in was where the top of his where his brain basically met his spinal column. He could feel these entities in there speaking to him, and he could only vaguely see them in what seemed to be gloomy, dark depths. Right? Okay. So these he's basically made contact with something that's inside his body, but I don't know. I don't know how that works.
What, is he seeing them in his mind's eye? Is that what he's kind of saying?
He's seeing them in his mind's eye, yeah. So basically he's doing this trip. And a lot of this stuff he explains that this is the best way I can describe it. And I've heard this before, like trying to describe what you see during these trips is just, impossible almost.
Well, I'm not going to have a problem with that later. I definitely remember detail by detail, so don't worry. I might be the exception.
All right. So when he made contact with these things, he said they projected a visual scene in front of him, and it was showing the Earth as it was eons ago before any life existed on this planet. So it was just like a barren wasteland with some water and all sorts of different stuff, but no life basically was on this planet. He then goes on to describe a kind of this idea of like directed panspermia. You know the idea of panspermia where life was seeded on this planet from outer space, basically from somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And so directed panspermia being the idea that it wasn't spermia.
Stop saying sperm.
Come on. Come on, guys. Let's keep it out of the gutter. Hey, this is an adult show.
How come every time I say something inappropriate, you guys are like, oh, Musa, way too far.
It's just comedy gold.
Boy. Anyway, directed panspermia. It's basically... So panspermia is basically like it happens like an accident. So something in a comet or something falls down from the sky and it seeds life on this planet. Directed panspermia means that it was
I've
on
heard
purpose.
This before.
Like it was supposed to happen. Yeah. Listen, Melissa, if your Tinder date starts talking about directed panspermia, shit, grab an umbrella or something. I don't know.
Oh, God. Okay. All right,
anyway,
good to know.
Back to the story. So this is what he describes as happening in the following scenes. Then black specks dropped from the sky by hundreds and landed in front of me on the barren landscape. I could see that the specks were actually large, shiny, black creatures with stubby pterodactyl-like wings and huge whale-like bodies. Their heads were not visible to me, but they flopped down to Earth, utterly exhausted from their trip, resting for further eons. So they basically fell to the sky and were so exhausted that they slept for eons further. He said, and then he sort of describes after these creatures, I guess, awaken from their slumber, they begin to communicate with him telepathically. So now he's now he's communicating with the things within his vision that the reptilian entities are showing him. These little creatures that fell to Earth are now speaking to him.
Huh.
Right?
Okay.
So they then begin explaining to him that they were fleeing from something out in space. They'd come to this planet, the planet Earth, they've come to escape their enemy. The creatures then showed me how they had created life on the planet in order to hide within the multitudinous forms and thus disguise their presence on Earth. So basically they seed the planet of all the creatures on Earth and hide themselves. I'm thinking, he doesn't go into this, but I'm thinking within the DNA. We've talked about the DNA being some sort of memory. I don't know. You know, there's data in there, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So they basically hide themselves in living creatures in order to escape this enemy, some sort of enemy that they were trying to flee from. So, yeah, I know this is fucking bizarre, but I'm so into it. So he says, before me, the magnificent, oh, fucking hell. He says, before me, the magnificent, fucking shitballs.
We gotta leave that. We gotta leave that in.
Magnificence. He says, before me, the magnificence of plant and animal creation and speciation, hundreds of millions of years of activity, took place on a scale and with a vividness impossible to describe. So obviously, like, he's seeing this like time lapse happening on Earth as these oily little creatures start seeding the planet of plants, flora and fauna, and all that sort of stuff, and it's just like spinning wildly out of control, and he can see everything starting to grow around him. And so he learnt that the dragon-like creatures were thus inside all forms of life, including man. They were the true masters of humanity and the entire planet, they told me. We humans were but the receptacles and servants of these creatures. For this reason, they could speak to me from within myself. So I don't know if this is the idea of the... This sounds very
familiar, but is this happened in like 1950 or something? Is right?
Mm-hmm. 56,
so this is before all the writings of all these people came out, right? I mean, like, we talk about this stuff all the time, but this is before it was published, so he's actually having kind of like an original thought.
Yeah, I mean, this guy, Michael Harner, he was the OG. He was the original dude who went out and, had the first one of these Western shamanic trips. So, yeah, I mean, when he talks about... And then I sort of link up these two ideas where he talks about these creatures could speak from within himself, right? Is that what those... the initial creatures, the giant reptilian creatures that were sort of hiding in the back of his brain, is that what he means? Like, is this what they kind of... the form they took? And that form in and of itself, obviously, we've talked about reptilians before, is super interesting, that is the sort of the creature that lives within all of us. And we have that reptilian side of the brain that we call... it just... I think that's super interesting. He's basically saying that this thing created everything. This species of alien dragon creatures created everything on this planet. It's always been there, and it's hiding inside us. Get out of there, you little bastards. So anyway, after...
I mean, that makes sense. We talk about that a lot.
Yeah. I mean, it lines up with a lot of things, really. Right, but the cool thing is he's like the first one to say that. Like, no one's really said that before 1950. Right. So yeah, that's why I think it's interesting. Yeah. Right. And so he did get a little bit of verification after this. So he says after his experience, he went back and spoke to the shaman of this tribe that he was staying with. And he was surprised to, in the least, to find out that the shaman confirmed knowing all of the stuff that he was talking about and filled in some gaps for him as well. Like, this is something apparently that these old school shamans of the past sort of, this is the information that they knew. Like, apparently the beginnings, the origins of the planet and life itself on this planet started from directed panspermia. And the shaman was also, he was saying, as just a little, final note here, the shaman was also saying that he was super surprised that this Michael Harner had received so much information. Like, apparently this takes a long time to process and receive these bits of information in sort of piecemeal form before you can sort of start putting it all together. Mm-hmm. But apparently the shaman was blown away that this Michael Harner had received it all in one sitting. And he was amazed that his brain could take that much information. But yeah, so that's what I got. I just thought it was like a bizarre story that, like I said, I think it lines up with a lot of different stuff we've talked about.
Mm-hmm. So do you think it doesn't sound too dark, though? It sounds kind of enlightening. Like, his trip wasn't too dark. Yeah.
Yeah, it does kind of sound like interesting, like he's like learnt the beginnings of the planet. But then I started thinking, when we talk about like the spirits on the other side being like manipulators and stuff, even the ET, were they telling the truth? Were they just fucking with him? I mean, they're basically saying, they said this line in there that I thought was kind of like interesting. Like, amongst all the like fascinating stuff that he found, there was this little line where he said, "We are the servants of these creatures," which I didn't care for that. That upset me a little bit. I wasn't down for that at all.
So,
that's really good.
No.
Reptilians, and we're serving them, isn't good in any context, in anything we've researched.
Right.
So I don't know why that would be good.
Yeah. So it was just this one throwaway line in the middle of this sentence where I was like, well, let's knuckle down on that for a second. But he just kind of moves on after that. So, yeah, like, it is...
Oh, wait. But think about it. They're like godlike, too. They're like, we created you. We're your creators. Like, the whole thing reeks of just like, worship me. Just, worship
manipulation
me.
and control.
Yep. Just like
they're hiding inside.
Story.
Yeah, they're hiding inside of everyone. And we're kind of subservient to them. That's
well. I mean, the more interesting thing too is, or maybe you have access to them while you're on psychedelics. So if you have the wrong set and setting, if you have the wrong, if you're in the wrong state of mind, maybe you can attract these things and they can fuck with you. They're tricksters. Who are the trickster spirits? Are they reptilians? I don't know.
Yeah,
true. That's true.
Who knows? Anyway, so that's what I got.
Cool, Josh. I bet you it's going to be super positive. Here we go.
Whoo! It's like a Spielberg movie. Yeah. Well, the early ones, not some of the weird later ones. Okay. Well, first, I do have a story about a monster, an entity, in an experience that I want to share quick. That's quick. It's a personal story. But tonight, I'm going to talk about reincarnation and psychedelics, or realizing a reincarnation while on psychedelics.
Cool.
The psychedelic experience is mostly talked about in a very clinical way in society today. Everyone speaks of it like it helps people with depression and kicks drug addiction, and that stuff is great and wonderful, and that should be used as a tool to push it forward. But there's so much magic and so many more interesting stories and encounters with beings, light and dark, and other amazing magical paranormal moments within that experience that are quote unquote real, I think. So tonight, first I want to share a quick experience where, like, I encountered a being in another dimension, and it wasn't. I don't know if it definitely wasn't. I don't know if it was good or bad, but it was crazy. So I don't know if anyone out there has ever smoked DMT before, but it is the craziest 15 minutes of your entire life. It is exactly what Joe Rogan says. It's like mushrooms times 1,000 plus aliens. I was with a few buddies, and this is a while back in a young Josh age, and we smoked it. And within seconds, you are fully on the trip. Like, within seconds, you take it in, you exhale, and it's like 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000. And then, bang, your entire reality just shifts in an instant, and there's no buildup. There's nothing. There's no slow rise. There's no anxiety like when you take mushrooms and your hands start to sweat. It's just instant. You're in that shit. And it was the scariest 2 minutes of my life. I did not breathe. So I looked at my brother who was there, and his face turned into like one of those Indian gods, like Shiva, where like there was heads behind heads, and they all fanned out. So it was like all of a sudden the same head would suddenly look to the left, and someone else would look to the right, and all of a sudden there was 10 of them, and it was exactly when you looked on the internet, like what happens when you're on one of these experiences. It was exact fucking picture. I was like,
oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
Oh, dude, it was so crazy.
Right.
I didn't breathe, and I was panicking, and my brother was like, breathe, Josh, and I took a deep breath. I felt like I peed myself. And then
so your brother was your shaman, basically.
He was. Breathe, pussy.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right.
RBG coming in for the save.
Oh, thank God he was there. No, I needed like a security blanket for this experience. It's too powerful. There's no preparing for it. You can watch every video on the internet. You can talk to all your friends. I knew that was coming, and I still couldn't deal with it. So, okay, the reason